What's your strict parents' worst rules? Story 1. As the eldest son of a Southern Baptist preacher, I was held to some high standards. Being seen and not heard, and that my every action was a reflection of my father as a leader to his congregation. I found music to be a great outlet, but of course any non-Christian music was not allowed and immediately destroyed upon discovery. Spare the rod, spoil the child was a mantra ingrained in my daily life. Once I was into my teens and spanking with stretched-out coat hangers was no longer enough to be considered punishment, due to the lack of tears my father moved on to shaving my head. Nothing like the constant reminder of how unworthy one is once their physical source of personal identity is forcibly removed. Frick, this thread sucks. Story 2. Oh, one I can answer. My mother is an honest-to-God narcissist. I graduated from high school early at 16 and didn't go to college immediately, so I worked a part-time job while all my friends went to school. Anyways, when all my friends graduated high school, we celebrated by going to the movies. My friend's mom dropped us off, and another friend's father was going to be picking us up. My mom was very upset at me going to the movies anyways, since it wasn't going to be over until after 9 p.m., my bedtime at the time. Anyways, finally she let me go on the condition that friend's dad get me home by 10 p.m. My friend's father ran into late-night construction on the way home with me and several other friends in the van, and the closer it got to 10 p.m., the more I started freaking out, telling everyone I was going to be in huge trouble if I didn't get home, like, right now. My friend's father assured me he would speak to my mom and all would be fine. I was the first dropped off because I was panicking so severely. The moment the van pulls into the driveway, my mom comes barreling out of the house telling me she was going to kick me for being late and keeping her up. My friend's dad tries to calm her down and separate her from hitting me. That is when she realizes I'm chewing gum. Now, my mother hated gum, said the only reason you would ever chew gum was to hide something. So naturally, she makes the assumption that I was late/chewing gum because I was busy sucking my friend's dad's doing. Yup, that was the only explanation in her mind. She grounded me for 12 weeks, an entire summer. I wasn't allowed to have a phone, cell phone, TV, or books the entire summer. Every morning, my mom would take the cable box, home phone handset, and keyboard to make sure I couldn't do anything. Needless to say, my friends never invited me anywhere again in fear that my mom would call the cops and accuse me of sucking their dad's doing. She also used to report my car stolen if I didn't call her back when I was in college. Please tell me you two no longer see each other or speak. Yeah, I've got to say, parents, if you treat your kids like this, I'm going to guess it's because you want them to hate you, because they're going to hate you. I mean, I can't tell you how to parent, but I can tell you how to drive a mountain-sized wedge between you and your child. Story 3. Mom gave me a black eye one night when I came home from a friend's birthday party at a skate rink. She made me tell people that I fell down and got hit in the eye by one of the wheels on a skate. I was 12. It was because I forgot to put away the dishes before I left. She also regularly broke remote controls throwing them at me, would slam my doors open so hard the knobs would slash through the drywall, stole the allowance my granddad gave me no matter where I hid it, and recently ripped a pair of my headphones out of my ears while I was using them and broke them by repeatedly whipping me in the face with them. Then followed it up by punching me a few times in the face. The last instance was about 4 to 5 months ago. I moved out and she regularly contacts me demanding money. I really hope you aren't giving her money. Gonna go on record as saying it doesn't sound like your mom is strict. It sounds like your mother is abusive, and I'm sorry you ever had to deal with that. Story 4. Not that crazy, just something that stuck with me since I generally consider my parent to be good/caring parents. Mainly just overprotective. But when I was 15, I got really depressed and kind of shut down academically and socially. My parents didn't know what to do with me. At one point, they ran out of ways to ground me, and my life was consequently made up of just going to school and coming home and lying motionless in bed, staring at the wall or sleeping. But my grades still hadn't improved, so they thought denying me of privacy/solitude by taking away my bedroom door would persuade me to get my grades up. Spoiler alert, it didn't, LOL. My stepmom and dad did this too. I was into choir and loved music, and they would take things that brought me any joy. Story 5. I dealt with a narcissistic/abusive mother. Most of my punishments weren't huge because I was a really good kid, but on my 18th birthday, because I asked for gas money the day before, the first time ever, she took mine and her car keys with her to work, and took the shed key, no garage, so I couldn't even ride my bike, and left a note on the table saying, "Happy 18th, now you're an adult, so get out of my house." I spent my birthday alone, trapped, and miserable, all over $10. My mother went crazy and left the house in tears on my 18th birthday because I wanted to go out with my friends. She didn't come home till after 2 a.m. Okay, so a lot of these stories aren't about super strict parents, but just about abusive parents. I mean, I don't want to judge without knowing whole stories, but I am struggling to imagine the stories where these reactions are even close to okay. Story 6. The word disgusting was banned and could have been considered just as bad as saying frick. We weren't allowed to close doors unless we were in the bathroom. We weren't allowed to watch Cartoon Network because it was garbage. They actually put a parental lock on Cartoon Network. The worst punishment was one time they decided that we were such bad kids, my sister was like 14, I was 12-ish, that they took everything we owned and bagged it up into garbage bags and made us carry them out to a burn pile, and they burnt everything we owned. All of my childhood memorabilia, pictures, clothes, diaries, everything. Burnt it all. Fricked up. When it was done burning the next day or so later, my sister and I looked through the ashes, and all that was left were 2 silver rings of hers that we cleaned off and kept. Crazy crap. Story 7. Bit late, but one day the news said school might be closed for a cold day, like a snow day, but for when it's cold enough your exposed skin freezes in less than 10 minutes. My mom demanded I start walking to school or she'd report me to the cops as truant. We argued. TV said school started late that day. I decided to go anyways, that being better than the arguing. She then decided I was to stay home for her to call the cops. I shoved past her, which she yelled at me was assault, and then locked me out of the house. Halfway to school, I was told school was closed. I had to call my dad to be let in the house again. That day, I promised myself I'd leave home as soon as possible. I've stayed halfway across the country from my mom ever since. Yeah, I really can't blame you on that one. I'm from Minnesota, and you don't mess with cold like that. A parent locking a child out in that cold should be assault in the best of circumstances. Story 8. I was not allowed to use public restrooms. I ruined our Disney trip because of how many times we had to go back to the hotel, not on site, when I was 6. And I quite honestly had accidents when I was far too old to do so because my parents had my teachers reporting bathroom use to them too. There was no place I could safely use the restroom other than home without getting into trouble. Finally, I got to use public restrooms without punishment when I freaking went to college. No, I'm not kidding. But I got pretty good at hiding restroom use in high school because the high school refused to report to my parents. Why did none of these teachers spot the abuse? How? Story 9. When I was in elementary school at about 6 years old, I used to have accidents because my bladder was too small. My mom would punch me in the bladder when I got home to make me pee myself and make fun of me when I did. I still have issues, and it turns out that my bladder and uterus is fricked up from a genetic disease. That is awful, but now you have a cool secret handshake to show your mom every time you visit her in her underfunded old age home. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. Story 10. When I was in first grade, I had a writing homework assignment. My dad used to be weird about me erasing because he wanted me to do it right the first time. I ended up erasing a lot of this homework, and my dad took the paper from me, ripped it in half, and told me to start over. Turns out it was the last sheet of paper in the entire house, and I don't remember why, but for some reason, we couldn't go and buy more paper that night. So ironically, I ended up having to completely erase an old homework assignment in order to have a sheet of paper to start over. I'm 22 now, and I still give him crap about this. As one should. That is the most unreasonable and frankly idiotic expectation for anyone writing a paper, let alone a kid at that age. I'm sorry, but that dad is a jerk and doesn't understand how good writing actually works. I wouldn't give my dad crap about that. I would give him the middle finger. Story 11. You could earn a full-on butt whooping for uttering any of the following. Shut up, butt. Accusing someone of lying for any reason, we were not permitted to use the words lie, liar, lying. Instead, we had to say, that's not the truth, or that doesn't sound right, or any other phraseology that wasn't some iteration of the word lie. I can relate, my siblings and I weren't able to say boring without my mom freaking out. Story 12. When I was a kid, I had dysgraphia, but my parents didn't know that. So I used to take time to do my homework. My mom would threaten to throw my homework out the window if I wasn't done by a certain time. I lived in an apartment block and this window was into a service shaft. I too had undiagnosed dysgraphia for years. I remember spending hours redoing my homework because it wasn't neat enough. Parents, I understand you want to push your child to reach their potential and do their best, but threatening them with stuff like this isn't the way. It's a good way to assure they're going to need therapy later in life. Story 13. No talking at the dinner table other than the occasional, do you want some more of this or please pass the salt? We could not talk about anything at all. No small/idle chat was allowed. First time you did it, you got yelled at. Second time was a whooping and then sent to your room until the next day without the rest of your meal. I make it a point now with my kids to chat up a storm each and every meal. Story 14. My parents once grounded me for 2 years for getting a B on my report card. Took everything out of my room besides the bed, and I wasn't allowed to do anything with friends. A year and a half into it, I asked if I could be ungrounded, and at that point, they had actually forgotten what they grounded me for. But refused because I must have done something bad if they grounded me. Also, they refused to let me stay up past 8 p.m., even in high school. That sounds like solitary confinement, and say it with me, folks, that's not strict, that's abuse. Story 15. As punishment, my dad would make us face a corner, stand on one leg, and keep both arms straight up in the air for a certain length of time. If our leg or arms went down, he'd double the time. Sometimes he'd give you a surprise visit from his belt or shoe if he was particularly peed. At least I grew up to have fantastic balance. That's called a stress position. They did it to a certain prison's inmates. There was an entire scandal. Story 16. My grandmother was a retired English teacher. One day I called my brother stupid. I was 4 or so. She filled me in on her rule that if I couldn't spell stupid, but I called someone stupid, then it was really me that was stupid. Thus, I should never call someone a name that I couldn't spell. So in my 4-year-old head, rather than avoid name-calling, I realized that I did know how to spell dumb, so that word must be permitted. I spent the rest of the day overusing the word dumb, and she wasn't quite sure what to do at that point. Story 17. When I was in preschool, 1993, there was a girl who wasn't allowed to play outside because she'd get her dress dirty. Thankfully, the staff always had a change of play clothes for her because F that. I brought my play clothes to my cousin's graduation party. I said hi to all the adults and chatted for a while, then put my shorts and t-shirt on to defend my badminton title. Story 18. When I was 13, no dating until unit. When I was 18, no dating until I finish unit. When I was 20 and about to graduate, no dating unless it's someone I chose for you, what the hell? In a year or two, it will be, why haven't you found a good person to give you kids yet? I want grandchildren. I'm not sure what country you're in, but the fact that your parents could tell you not to date at 20 is wild to me. I'm sorry, that sounds so frustrating, and this whole thread is stressing me the heck out. Story 19. I once got beaten and locked in the basement because my hands were literally not large enough to play a certain piano piece. I couldn't play an octave separation yet. Before you ask, yes, I am Asian. French guy here. I play the violin. My brother played the piano. Although we enjoyed it at first, our love for music died when passion was met with fear. Story 20. My brother stepped on the PS2 controller cable, sending the PS2 flying off the shelf and smashing it all over the floor. As punishment, my dad whipped me across the back a few times, and when I tried to run away, he threw some rocks at me. The whip marks stayed on my back for a few weeks. I know some folks like to defend spanking, usually to justify what they've been through, but I think we can all agree that this is just plain abuse, and that dad is awful. Story 21. We weren't allowed to have food upstairs, but I had food wrappers in my trash can, so they searched my whole room, ripping clothes off hangers, throwing stuff out of drawers, etc., and for 3 months I wasn't allowed in my room for anything unless accompanied by one of them. Story 22. I refused to greet my sister's new boyfriend with more than a sup, so later that night my mom Hulk smashed my laptop, double fist style. Story 23. No TV. Not as a punishment, just no TV, ever, because apparently it lets the devil in. The second I, as the last kid, moved out, they started watching TV all the time. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.